right. We're winning. We're winning to the moon. Rocket ships, moon emojis. It's great.
What are you doing?
Oh yeah.
What are you doing?
Hi Larry. I am trying to beat Wall Street by putting all of my money on Wall Street.
How was that?
Well, you see, all these hedge funds betted against this stock, and so that means that if I put all of my money on the stock, then I win, and they lose. It's going to be absolutely great.
How do you know it's for real?
It's a JPEG on the internet. You could never actually modify a JPEG on the internet. All of them are real. What's today's date, by the way?
Is that a checkbook?
Yes, it's the 29th. Yes, I remember. Yes, it's good. Don't worry about it.
Don't you think that these guys are looking at the forums too? Don't you think? Maybe they've started it. Maybe they've started the fake stuff.
No. You see, hedge funds are run by 23-year-old frat bros, and they've obviously never been on the internet, and they obviously don't know what Reddit is. And so that's absolutely impossible.
It all sounds like gambling to me.
Oh, gambling, that's a great idea. Hold on, I've got some chips here. This is fantastic. Hold on, let me just do that. Oh, wait, I think I've got some more cash here, so hold on a second here. Let me just empty out. Okay, there it is.
Coins in the cushions.
Oh, yeah, here, great, fantastic. Oh, okay, so there's all my money.
So wait, what's your exit strategy? What's the end game for getting this back?
I have no idea. Welcome.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you. So here's a.
I like you opened your piggy bank to do this little sketch here.
Right. This is again, like everything here, it's always last minute. so let's just
put this over.
Hold on. No, we'll clean it up as we can talk.
Oh, okay.
Let me start the timer formally.
It might make some noise.
It's okay. It's fun. Right. It's going to be a foliage. Folly? What is it? I don't know.
I don't know what word you're looking for.
The people that do the background noise.
Oh, Foley.
Foley, yeah.
Well, that's not really background noise. That's natural noise.
Oh,
Things that footsteps.
And then there's Axel Foley, which is...
Axel Foley, that's a lot of noise.
Yeah. So anyway, how was your week overall?
Oh, it was pretty good. We had some rain here in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Once a year, the rainy season, the 28th through the 30th of January every year. And then...
it's done, right?
Nice
it's done.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. We're done.
That's right. It'll come back. I like
the winter, because it went down below, it was 58?
I think so.
At some point?
I like it how the weather here is so polite. And, the rain only comes at night.
Only at night.
Exactly. And then by the daytime, it's just, it just kind of goes away.
And we get all those beautiful flowers and fresh...
So, yeah, but other than that...
other than that, did you lose money at GameStop today? Because I know you were shorting it. If anyone was shorting
this stuff
it was
is just
you.
So insane because, there's that story of if we hit this price, then all these people lose out, and then they have pictures to prove it. But I'm like, dude, you could just written that up in Excel. I have no, I don't know whether this is real or not, and there's no real evidence to know whether it's real or not.
What's real though is Robinhood screwed for all of their promises of being No.
I don't think you understand how that worked.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that there's something called the DTCC, and that's the actual place where the trades happen, and they take a few days. And you need to have a collateralized.
You'd be able to front the money. Yes.
Right. And that's based on the volatility of the stock. And so what happened is that all of a sudden you had all of these people putting money into this one stock that made its volatility go out the roof. And then, they said, well, you don't have the collateralized assets. You can't do these trades. So they said, we can't do it, right? And so that was the reality. And they said, okay, well, we can only sell. We can't because we're out of money. Mm. We don't. And so it took them a day to get all of those loans in. And people say, well, Webull didn't have that problem. Say, yeah, I know, but it's way smaller than any of the other ones are.
Webull is smaller than any
than Robinhood.
Yeah.
And not only that, but there were a lot of brokerages that were nope, we're not going to do that right now because of the volatility. And it's like that with any type of really high volatile market, is that they decide, no, we can't collateralize against this. It's just a trigger that was put in there. And then they allow for limited buys, but no, they weren't trying to be evil.
It's still it comes across like it, though.
It does.
It does come across like the company. I understand what you're saying.
I understand it comes across as evil because people don't know how it works.
They're stuck, right? Exactly, but they're counting on their customers not knowing how it works, so they wouldn't be at Robinhood in the first place.
This is like this is like when you have a climate scientist on that hedges about whether this proves climate change or not, because their definition of proof is way different than a common definition of proof, and they're saying, "Aha, it's a scam! I knew it." They're not confident about it. Like, no, that's not it. You just don't understand science.
They should have been more upfront about explaining it. We don't have the collateralization to front this much money.
And then some people,
but they didn't.
Some people think
so it ended up their message.
Some people think that
which you got and I got because we're both on Robinhood. Sounded like they were protecting a hedge fund. That's what it sounded like. They should have thought that through before they sent the message.
All of those things played into this narrative, but the reality is that when you look at the people that are really posting hard about this on the forum, and you look at their post history, they've been posting hard about trying to pump up GameStops since mid-November or so. So, they've been saying like GME to the moon, blah 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 blah, like pump it, buy, right? And like it was always falling in deaf ears until maybe 5 days ago when they came up with this new thing about like, hedge funds have bets again, and they came up with this like crazy narrative, and then it went like this. But those people, they've been trying to push the same assets for weeks or months, and so to think that like the narrative is true or real, I just don't believe it.
Well, how much did, although they have trillions, so it doesn't matter. How much did the average hedge fund lose because they had to?
You don't know.
Yeah.
There are people that claim that they're insiders. And that they have charts that show it. But there's no confirmation for that. Like somebody could have just drawn that or taken it from. There's absolutely no confirmation. Not only, but here's a few other things about that. Is that then you'll see these things about like somebody saying, I was able to, thanks to this, I made $50,000. I can pay for my daughter's cancer treatment or whatever. Like, and you see these stories like that, and what those are is that's effectively the equivalent of walking into the casino, and then you see the picture with the people with the big checks that won $50,000 on the slot machine, right?
Well, for every one of those, there's 30 million people that lost, that went home on a Greyhound bus.
Right, not you. Right, that's why at the casino the slot machines are always only noisy when you win.
But if you're really, really good gambler, the casinos keep an eye on you. And if you're counting cards, which I don't know how that became illegal, memorizing what's going on, if you're counting cards, you can be banned from the casino.
Yeah, if you actually use too much skill, you're gone.
If you can remember what happened at the table, we don't want you here.
Yeah, that's why that's why when you go into the casino, all the people at the table are like 95 years old.
Yeah, because they can't. Everyone else has been banned.
Right.
First time I went to Las Vegas,
Frank Sinatra was playing.
Sinatra was there. The incomparable Shirley Bassey was opening for him. Then we went out to Caesars and we pulled the heist. No, I don't know. I might have been. Let's
pick
say
a dollar, any dollar.
Let's say I was 25.
Okay, sure.
And the drinking age, I believe, was 18. And I kept getting. I wasn't even drinking, but I kept getting carded to step on the floor because the next youngest person there was 67 years old. So it threw the whole thing off. I looked like I was 4 years old compared to, and I was with some friends and we tried to take a picture, which we weren't up to anything. We got rushed by security. They didn't hit us. Sorry, no pictures. You can't take any photographs on the floor.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And back then, that's when they had the gunpowder thing that you had to set up. And you had to smile at the birdie.
So we had come and we put the neck brace on so we wouldn't move. So the whole
they put the curtain over his head. He had the tripod.
We brought in Matthew Brady. He came in with all of his equipment.
So the other thing about the hedge funds is, well, so first of all, like you only see the winners, right? It's like the lottery.
Yeah.
And the other part is these people. It's not like they don't read the internet. Like they know what's going on here, and it's true that maybe in the first day of trading, like they lost some money, but they were on top of that real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably changed that over to, so the hedge funds, they had some options planning on the stock to go down. And what they probably said is, oh, the stock's going up right there. So we have $1 million on it going down. We're going to put $50 million on it going up.
Yeah.
And that would negate our losses, right?
Yeah.
And they're still going to walk away super rich. Why?
Yeah.
Because they have the server that's connected to
They make the
New York
rules
Stock.
also.
They make the rules, and it's like, I view this a lot like I view the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. And you're like, okay, even if you get into the building, like, what do you expect to happen?
If you
like,
take over the building, you run the
matter.
government. Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if you are able to manipulate the market here, you're not writing the rules. You haven't changed the power.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's still a private rigged system that's rigged against you.
Yes.
And with something like this thing, all that you're doing is you're increasing the volatility, which means the high frequency traders, the ones that go in microseconds, this is what they die for, because those are the ones where they can it's kind of like back in the Renaissance of Italy, how they had these telescopes and they could see what's coming in on a ship as the first, and so then they run down and start trading ahead of time based on what's coming in, right? And the Medicis were the ones that started that, and they have all of these observations, these large telescopes. And high-frequency trading is effectively the same thing, is that they can see the trades coming in, the limit, all of the orders on both sides of the book, in real time, and then they can trade them before anybody else can see it.
They have faster
machines, exactly,
yeah.
before anybody else can respond. And so they can sort of like always sort of push aside and win the race. And so when you have a stock that goes, right, they're making bank. They're making so much money on that.
This is perfect. So in the stock market, these traders are allowed to have these high frequency things,
HFTs.
this equipment, this electronic computers that do something faster. But if you can remember what cards were dealt in the previous hand, we're kicking you out of Caesar's Palace.
That's the thing, is that I bet you that
we can use computers, but if you...
six months from now, we're going to find out that these evil companies like Citadel or whatever, they made like $1 trillion like on those days.
Because they saw it coming.
Because they are also on Reddit.
Yeah.
They're also like, these are, again, whenever you see like the people that do these HFT, these high frequency, or anybody that works in these brokerages, they're basically like frat bros that are like 23 years old. Like, you don't think they go on the internet? You don't think they're gamers? Like, what the really?
Yeah.
Like they are the core demographic. They're the ones that probably set this entire thing up.
Yeah.
Right? Does that mean that some people aren't making money? Yeah, I'm sure some people are making money. Yeah, that's fine. I'm
About
sure.
to make their $1,000.
And there's some people that are in there and they got in early and then they sold late, and that's fine. That's fine. But in the thick of things, I bet that more people will come out behind than ahead in this, and
more regular traders,
more regular amateur traders like me,
more people on Robinhood.
Yeah, like I will come. Like I tried some of these things and I came up behind every time I tried it. Right,
Yeah.
like I'm not good at this.
But
I'm not
people
good at
at Goldman Sachs will come out way ahead.
But the thing is that like the stock market is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Right. Is that when I put money in, somebody else gets on the other side. If I lose that $40, I mean somebody else has got that $40, right? And so when you have the average person losing, and the average person is, let's say, 5 million people, and then you have the hedge funds winning, and the hedge fund is 20 people, it funnels it up to the top again. And so that's the thing, is that the fundamental power dynamics haven't changed, and people think that this does it, and it just absolutely doesn't. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have fun. Like if people want to do this.
Some of these guys made $300. Big deal. Good for them.
What if some of these people made $50,000, right?
Yeah.
Right? They did risky options a couple of days ago. Maybe they called them at $400. Yeah. They did it. Then you had the AMC ones, and some of these people got really lucky and they did everything at the right time. And I'm sure that they made out like bandits. I'm sure. Just like I'm sure that somebody won the lottery tonight.
Yeah.
But that doesn't negate the fact
people did not.
Exactly that most people probably did not, right? Yeah. And you don't hear that is the whatever Richard Nixon says. That's the true silent majority. Is that people don't talk about, hey, I tried this thing, I lost $40. Like those people don't post, right? Yeah. You only hear about the people that posted crazy, and it's a frenzy, right? It's the same kind of frenzy that you saw with Bitcoin, or that you saw with the 2016 Trump election, what you saw with the QAnon thing. It's just this mob mentality. Now, and people will say, well, it's because you're trying to, and you get the same kind of attack as if like I'm trying to defend the hedge funds or trying to defend the rich. I'm like, no, I'm not. It's just that this is not an effective strategy against them. You're not. This isn't how you win. It's like saying, oh, I know how to defeat them. I'm going to take this gun and shoot myself in the foot. And you're like, well, I understand that enemy's real. Yeah. But you haven't done anything other than like shake your fists. It's just stupid. I don't know. So that happened this week. Joe Biden seems to be doing some things this week.
Yes, or undoing Trump's
some
damage.
Undoing things, and
I have a feeling we're still not going to see Trump's another week, and we still haven't seen Trump's health care plan. I don't know how much longer he can hold out.
Yeah. I think the Great Awakening is coming one day.
Any second now, we'll see
the storm is upon us. Yeah, to Trump's thing where he has all those sealed indictments against the thousands of pedophiles.
Yeah, we're going to see that any second.
Yeah, the Clinton death list.
Pizza place, yeah.
Yeah, the underground tunnels of the pizza place.
And her email.
All going to be shown.
Emails.
The emails and private servers are all going to be shown.
Any second now.
Yeah, and we're going to find all of those missing children and all of the pedophiles. It's all going to be shown. Yeah. And Q is going to come up. And he's just going to, 17, and it's all going to be there. It's just totally going to happen, I'm sure. The fourth dimensional chess is just one more move. It's all going to be there.
What did happen this week?
I was finding out about the original sort of satanic panic from like the early 80s. And a lot of it seems quite similar to, did you ever hear there was this preschool in Manhattan Beach?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that
that was the late 80s, I think.
Yeah,
already.
Mid to late 80s. And basically it's Pizzagate.
Well, you know what happened? And that happened again around 94, except no one was arrested.
You got to back up and tell them what the late 80s is. You can't just like...
What happened was kids had started to claim, I guess one kid started it.
No, that's not it. What it was one mother.
One mother started.
Who had a lot of mental problems. And then what she would do is that she would have this technique where she would start doing, playtime with the kids, as in like you're imagining things. You know what I mean? Like saying, all right, we have monsters and clouds and blah, 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 blah. And then you enter the land of imagination, and then she does sort of leading questions to the kids. And she brings out the dolls, and then she says, oh, have you seen this? Like, yeah, I saw that on Daddy. Well, have you seen it on anybody else? And like, I don't know, and they...
Well, what had happened was kids want to please their parents, and they want to please their teachers.
Right.
And so they started to believe that there was underground beneath this Manhattan Beach preschool.
Right.
Manhattan in California.
Exactly.
Manhattan Beach preschool. And this went all the way to all the teachers being charged with abuse, even though tunnels didn't exist. But kids would keep saying, oh, yes, they did, because they were asked in a way where they wanted to give the answer they thought their parents wanted. The parents came with
shovels and started digging.
Yeah. They wanted, kids were saying it. It was, this kind of mass hysteria, but the kids were just trying to tell the parents what they wanted to hear. And that happened again, and the teachers were charged, and the owner of the school was charged, and no one ever found any underground tunnels.
Some of the teachers ended up in jail for
Yes.
4 or 5 years.
Until they were cleared, where they said, you know what, there really are no tunnels under here.
There's no tunnels, and then they were like, okay, so, there's, like, where are these 200 dead kids coming from? Like, where's the record of them?
Who's missing? Yeah.
And like, nothing happened.
And then
it was just this crazy panic, and it was the same kind of thing. Like they found messages that they left in the answering machines.
Yeah.
Stuff like, things like, oh, you left your sweater at the office.
Yeah.
And then they said, oh, sweater means, underground sex dungeon. It's the same.
The whole QAnon thing.
Except
people went to jail for it
Right.
before they realized that the whole thing was that people went to jail based on the testimony of children that were only telling the police what they thought they wanted to hear.
Right. And it was spearheaded by people who were clinically insane.
Yes, they were mentally ill. Absolutely.
That are actually like in asylums. Like, they might have died by now, but they spend the rest of their lives like in mental institutions.
And it's very similar to QAnon, except no one is prosecuting based on the QAnon claims. Yeah, anyway, because Trump is out. In 93, let's say, about 93, there was something similar where a kid had claimed that a big van with colorful paint or something like that someone had jumped out and tried to kidnap him. And so let's just accept that as true. Let's say the kid was telling the truth.
This thing does happen.
Let's say this was true, but he described it as this big van with painted on the side. So, of course, all the news, and there was news at the time, news and local programming on the time, everyone was saying, tell your children to watch out for this big van with the colorful paint on the side. So, of course, within a week, every kid was claiming they had spotted it because I think they felt, these 4-year-old, 5-year-old children felt their parents wanted them to see it. So kids were on the news and parents were on the news. My son saw it. Meanwhile, no adult had ever seen this van. Plus, if you were going to kidnap children, would it still be a giant van with a rainbow painted on the side? Yeah. And wouldn't you, maybe since it was the top story everywhere, lay low for a little while? But for weeks, kids were claiming, yes, I saw it. It was here. Right before you showed up, the van was here.
Because, 4-year-olds never make anything up.
Yeah. But they weren't even making it up. They were telling their parents what they wanted to hear, what they thought their parents wanted to hear. And there was no van. No one ever found a van. No one ever thought of anything. But at least that time they didn't start arresting people.
Yeah, so I had to change the color scheme, and I did lay low.
Yeah.
And I was in Barstow for a couple weeks.
And then you move out of, Oceanside.
But this has happened a few times. There was the congressional page scandal of the early 80s with supposedly missing pages that happened.
Right. But nobody could come up with a single name of people that were missing. And then QAnon goes the other way now because these horrible murders at elementary schools in Marjorie Douglas Stoneman Douglas High School, where people were actually killed. Children in second grade in Connecticut were actually killed. Students in Stoneman High School were actually killed. And QAnon is claiming they never existed in the first place. These people, you're making up these names.
Yeah, when there actually is a school shooting and a bunch of kids are dead and there's like photographs of them.
And there's funerals and kids.
That is fake.
That's fake. So they're both claiming that there's missing kids when there's no missing kids.
But Hillary Clinton eating children and then sacrificing the remains of Beelzebub, that's real.
That's real. When we claim kids are missing, kids are missing. And when you claim kids are murdered, nothing happened. They never existed in the first place. And that's QAnon.
And they're real. They believe in it,
Yeah, these people should not be allowed to vote, much less in Congress.
The funniest thing is that, so I found out about this. This was like 1988, 87 or something like that. So I went to Twitter.
Late 80s. Yeah.
And I typed in the name of the school. And I was like, are people still talking about it? And there's posts every week, and people
still claiming it's true?
They still believe it's true.
They still think it's true.
But
no one comes up with a missing child's name.
But that's conspiracy brain. Yeah. The exercise of conspiracy brain is like, there is a man in your refrigerator who turns off the light whenever you open up the door. And then you say, well, I've never seen the man. But, well, he's invisible.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I've never seen anything adjusted. Well, he's very small.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I could bring up an X-ray, and he does, he's impervious X-rays. And the thing is,
then they'll start to tell you people that told you there's someone in your refrigerator.
Is that,
well, that's funny because Steve told me there's someone in your refrigerator, and I believe him.
Once you have this type of conspiracy theory stuff, is that they can come up with anything in order to, come up, defend the most absurd hypothesis. Yeah. Because the sky's the limit. They can come up with any narrative they want to. It's the limit of fiction at that point, which, as we know, is limitless, right? You can come up with any story you want, and so there is no evidence. There is nothing that you can do in order to assuage those types of opinions.
There's no side you can take that they,
and so they will be convinced that Trump is smarter than Stephen Hawking until they die.
Right. Even though
there's
all evidence to the contrary.
There's nothing.
This evidence thing, we've been burnt on evidence before.
And there's Vince Foster, Seth Rich, all of these.
Seth Rich family won a big settlement. Was it against who was it against? Fox or?
Well,
was it against Fox?
There was this
Fox,
one,
maybe.
Let's go back to this one. It was a Clinton attorney during the first term of the president, and he had severe depression and ended up committing suicide. Very tragic tale, right? And it was like the most researched,
was most investigated
death, second to JFK.
Yeah.
In dollars spent. Accounting for inflation.
By the way, in taxpayer dollars.
Right,
spent.
exactly.
Yes.
And so number one is JFK. Number two is this guy,
Vince
right?
Foster.
Vince Foster. And every single, and it was investigated by people who said they killed.
The Clintons.
The Clinton killed him. I'm going to investigate it. I need the money. He said, "Here's the money. Go investigate." And they came back and said, "Suicide."
Yeah.
And they did it multiple times. Yeah. And every person that did the investigation themselves got convinced that there was no evidence for it, but people still believe it.
Same thing with is it Seth Rich, the guy that died? Maybe he died of natural causes, and the family sued, I believe, Fox News for keep reporting that it was a murder.
Oh, but
they won recently.
But that's the thing. Is
they won recently. Millions
within
of
the past 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
Fox News will put these internet conspiracies on as news without any disclaimer whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, tonight there is more news about the Clinton body count as we have received new information about Vincent Foster's terrible murder in 1992. Right, and they'll just take it as real.
Reported as news on a channel called Fox News.
You won't hear about this on mainstream news. Of course you won't, because it's bullshit.
They are mainstream news, by the way. At this point, you won't hear it. You won't hear about it on anything else with the word news in it.
Because it's horseshit. There's nothing real about it. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back. So this week I also watched a movie.
Oh, what'd you watch?
I watched the 2019 Terminator movie.
Wow.
I'm a fan of the series, so I have watched every single one. Everyone after Terminator 2, I've watched 1.2 or 1.4 speed. You know what I mean?
You have to get through it quicker.
Well, yeah, and some of it is that I'm just curious as to what's going to happen with the plot line, if anything comes of it. But it's more like a sitcom where nothing's getting resolved, and it's 6 of them, right?
And at that point, they know there's going to be a 7th, and they know there's going to be an 8th.
So that's the thing, and so I watched it. It was fine. It was a fine action movie. I'm not going to say it was as awful as 3 through 5. It was, but it was like I don't know. It was like a Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise.
Oh, I like those movies.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You watch it, that's a fine movie. That's just nothing. But when you read the Wikipedia page, it's so sort of what is it called when you're insulting yourself as a comedian? It's called
self-deprecation.
It's self-deprecating.
Yeah.
So you have things like Mackenzie Scott, who was the lead actress.
Yeah.
And she said something like, "Oh, I'm very proud of it. We worked really hard on it, but you know, something advertised as the third best Terminator movie isn't really that great. And, you know, we should probably just listen to what the customers want. You know, and Linda Hamilton, she said, you know, like, yeah, they might call me back, but I'd probably fake my death before I'd go back and do another movie.
So they all hate it? They all there for a paycheck?
And...
or a stack of cash.
Or whatever it is. And it's just that, like, you read about it, like, everybody there said something like, yeah, I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we got together. This was fun. But, like, yeah, I just don't ever want to do this. And it was a bomb, relatively speaking, especially for James Cameron.
Yeah.
Right? James Cameron is used to these billion-dollar movies. And although it probably, I think it made, like, you know, 150 million or 200 million or something like that.
Not enough.
In a James Cameron world, it's a $90 million movie. Yeah. It's one where they have, like, you know, fights on helicopters that are going down underwater. It's clearly high budget. Some other interesting parts about it is that they changed the spoiler alert, as if you're ever going to watch it. They killed John Connor in the first few minutes.
Okay.
And then it turns out that the new John Connor is this Mexican girl who is in Mexico City. So they have it all taking place in Mexico City, which I thought was pretty nice because, you know, they depicted it as a good modern city of decent, hardworking people. And it's always nice to see Mexico depicted realistically like that. But at the same time, they slighted Mexico because they did all of that in Spain. And the Mexicans hate the Spanish. They hate them because of the colonialism. Right? They just despise them. You know, they spit on their face. And then the directors said, oh, yeah, we did it in Spain because we thought Mexico was still too dangerous.
Oh, good. That's a nice thing to say.
And so it was like racist and insulting at the same time. They said it takes Americans to be able to do this thing and still somehow insult the Mexicans when they're doing it.
So they couldn't figure out a way to go to Mexico at all without being too dangerous. We'll go to a place that isn't too dangerous. How about this town?
And not only that, it's not like Pedro Almodovar can't make movies in Mexico.
Yeah, everybody, people visit Mexico. Tourism is the number one business of Mexico.
Right, but
you can't be so dangerous that you can't make a movie in Mexico.
Is that there's...
Go to a different town if you're in a
not only,
bad
but
town in Mexico.
There's all of, like, Almodovar, right? There's plenty of great movies that are already filmed in Mexico. Yeah. Right? And it's not like you can't... I mean, give me a break.
He filmed part of Titanic in Mexico. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I think that's where they had... I think they have the biggest tank in the world that's suitable for filming. And I think he shot some of it down there.
And they filmed some of it in Budapest.
But people were killed.
Too.
What? Yeah, they shot in Budapest?
Yeah, in Budapest. So, yeah, and so everybody was trying to distance themselves from the work.
Because it only made $190 million?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that's another part of it is maybe it's the kind of decline that's happened in sci-fi since the 80s.
Yeah.
Is...
well, it's not amazing anymore because people know it's computerized.
Well, no, I don't think that's really it.
It's not impressive.
It's that there is more sort of, and people that are fans of sci-fi have a word for this thing, but there's more sort of contemplative, and it's more sort of what you'd call it
cerebral.
Cerebral, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it was more cerebral. So you had this. Guy that came from the future, and when he drove a car, he didn't know about the laws that you had to be like what side of the road you had to be on, or the fact that you had to ride on the street instead of the sidewalk, right? And he had all of these sort of inadequacies that he didn't understand like how money worked or anything like that, but he came from that time. And so there's those parts right there where like they don't explain it to you of like saying, what is this thing? Who is this? And they're just like, I don't know. I guess this is enough, right? And they're just like throw it down, and then okay, right? Like he has no constant, and so you do things like that, and it really adds to the narrative. And then you have the end scene, which I guess at that point you didn't realize that he was sent by his own son or whatever, right? And that little twist ending, and it's this. and it's really good sci-fi for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Whereas in the most recent version, there was really none of that. It was an action movie, right? There was really no sort of cerebral stuff like that. You had a bunch of explosions and a bunch of these robots that could do all these crazy things and all these expensive scenes and stuff. It was fine, but like that aspect was gone.
Yeah.
So I think that Her had the cerebral part to it. So I think it's still possible, but the kind of contemplative sort of the golden age of sci-fi, 1950s, right? Like I don't know. Like I think it's kind of as far as mainstream stuff goes, is kind of dead.
Well, the thinking part, which is the more interesting part, has been replaced by CGI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just too bad.
And sci-fi movies did not traditionally have action in them specifically.
Right, exactly.
They weren't people hanging from helicopters or explosions. That's not what the premise ever was before.
Like The Day the Earth Stood Still, for instance, right?
Yeah. Or any of I would about half of the Twilight Zone episodes would fall into the genre of sci-fi, and yet there's no special effects.
Like The Day the Earth Stood Still, the only sort of violence was that the robot came out and then like zapped the guns outside of the hands of the people and said, "Ha ha ha! Like, no more war for you."
Yeah.
And so it was a kind of an anti-violence at that point. And I think that part of it was sci-fi always exists in the context of the times, and nobody wanted to see action movies in 1947. They wanted to see depictions of the world getting along.
Yeah, right.
They didn't want to see places going to war.
They had not only seen the war, but then they had seen the Nuremberg trials.
Oh yeah, all those terrible right. And so, like the first sort of the first apocalyptic nuclear war movie that really sort of became famous was On the Beach.
Yeah, right.
And in that one, basically, it's post-nuclear war, and the only sort of survivable place is Australia, and they only have a limited amount of time until they die as well. And it's people going around, and they go to San Francisco, and it's absolutely destroyed, and they say, "No, I'm going to die in my own city." It's just terrible, terrible thing, right? And they just show the horrors and the pain and suffering of what this was. And it's because the audience knew of it, right?
Yeah.
Because they sacrificed, right?
The audience had experienced it in a way, yeah.
Right, that's exactly. But like, that's just gone, right?
Yeah.
And World War II is no longer a living memory. And so now we think that like, people that want women's rights are Nazis or something. We're so confused these days, right? Because we
don't know the difference between Nazism, fascism, socialism, communism.
Yeah, or somebody or a professor that's asking you to do your homework.
Yeah, right. Right, that Nazi bastard.
Wouldn't it be funny if you? How did you know? And then he has like an armband.
That's right.
They've discovered me.
Like a Monty Python sketch.
So, I was trying to get a segue into this other topic, but then I kind of went away from it, and I'll try to get back into it. So when I was talking about Terminator, I was talking about how people want to distance themselves from the movie, and this has been done a lot. Is actors wanted to distance themselves and
from things they've done,
and they have their own sort of, and they use pseudonyms.
Alan Smithy, there you go.
Right, and so the most famous one is one by the DGA.
Yeah,
and it is a term specifically to the DGA. People have probably heard of Alan Smithy, but it is. Do you know anything about the actual rules of it?
I think that
it's expired now, but let's
I think the rule was you can only you can't take your name off it under certain contracts, and if you could, you had to use a pseudonym. I'm not sure.
You had to argue it in a court.
Yeah, and
so they had a court system.
Yeah.
Wherein you had to say, this was beyond my control, in some significant way that I was not allowed to do anything. Like I didn't get final cut.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Or any cut. Yeah.
And as opposed to saying like, oh, I just didn't like the dialogue or something like that. So.
Or it didn't come out good. I didn't do a good job, so I don't want to take responsibility for it.
So then if the DGA agreed, then you could do it under the constraint that you can never talk about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes what would happen is somebody would then later on reveal that they are the Alan Smithy, and then they would go in, and all future copies, they'd remove the Alan Smithy and put the name back in. They were serious about it, right?
Yeah.
And some people got it only for certain cuts. And so the cinematic release of Dune is David Lynch, but the 3-hour cut is Alan Smithy. He didn't want it, so he was able to get it on some of them. So that's that one.
And then, in the biggest irony ever, there was a supposedly comedy movie about Alan Smithy.
Right, and it was so poor that the director ended up removing himself from it, and so the movie about Alan Smithy, and then they retired.
Directed by Alan Smithy.
Yeah, directed them. Then they retired the term at that point. Also, another reason for it going on early on in the late '60s was when they would swap out directors. They maybe have 2 or 3, and then they couldn't decide on one.
Well, that would be arbitrate eventually.
But what I'm saying is that
no one wanted to take credit.
Right.
For
that's what I was saying at the end.
Yeah.
Is that they if it was only one director and you didn't want to take credit for it, or she didn't want to take credit for it, they could say, well, too bad. But if it was 3 or 4, then you're like, well, I don't know what to do.
Well, I don't have to take credit for it because you had 3 other people.
Right, and you can just be Ouroboros and just point the hand at the next person. And supposedly, the first name that they proposed was Alan Smith. And it's too common. And so they said, well, what about Alan Smith with an E on the end? What about 2 E's?
Yeah.
And so they came up with that one. But they retired it in the late 90s, and they've replaced it with another name, like Jim Lee or something, since then. But the practice is mostly gone, and people aren't using pseudonyms.
Well, one of the things is now there's so much publicity that begins before scripts are written, before directors are hired, and there's so much, you can't erase the internet. There's so much publicity, and the minute something happens, it's forever on the World Wide Web. So it's hard for someone to direct something and then claim he or she hasn't when there's been 500 press releases that you can find on Google. So it's always obvious who directed, who wrote, who starred.
Another interesting thing that I was thinking about that I didn't mention is that the credit-based system was not always there in movies.
No, not when studios owned it. Sometimes someone's, girlfriend would get credit.
And even as late as, let's say, the 30s, it would be a title card, and that would have all the credits associated with it. And they wouldn't have an end scroll or anything.
That's really why unions started, where in industries unions started to have the 8-hour day, or to get weekends off, or to get a minimum wage, or to get health care. But in entertainment, unions started to make sure people were properly credited.
Right. And they would credit D.W. Griffith, for instance, but they wouldn't credit any of the actors.
Yeah, well, they didn't want to credit the actors because they thought in the silent era, in the beginning of the silent era, because then they'll come back and look for more money if they're famous.
Right.
But later, producers and writing credits were just sometimes went to someone's buddy until there was guilds and unions.
Yeah, and so like by the 30s or so,
Late
basically
30s,
all of the big names were there.
Yeah.
But we still didn't get into the credit crawl.
Yeah, well, that was just an eventual negotiation. Yeah, you just used to, there used to be nothing at the end except the end, copyright 1927. And they used to put all the players and all the lists in the front.
But I'm talking about the opening.
Yeah.
So, for instance, let's say Northwest with the Bernard Herrmann scene, and then you have all of the stylized fonts on the different buildings, as they say, Cary Grant.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And the opening sequence to North by Northwest is it's a beautiful 3 or 4 minutes. It's probably the best part of the movie.
It's a kind of
it's
practically
a great movie,
animated.
But that is fabulous, right? And it became its own art form, right? Like sort of post World War II, and so people wanted it because, whereas beforehand you don't really like His Girl Friday did. The opening scene was the girl walking through the newsroom and the camera following them, but it wasn't the title credits, right?
But that went away, and things moved to the end because of television. You could turn on television, see entertainment right away, and people weren't used to going to the theater. And then as pretty as the North by Northwest credits were, nobody knew who the names were until you got to Alfred Hitchcock. Cary Grant, of course. But every crew member and every
Well,
DP,
that's the other thing.
And the audience didn't want to sit through it before the movie began.
They wouldn't credit those names early on.
Well, they didn't credit all of those names.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you go into a movie today, like you'll
15-minute credit sequence.
Like the caterers are there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you wouldn't see that. You would see the cinematographer, but you wouldn't see the entire lighting crew. You wouldn't see the electricians. You
all of
the
special
gaffers,
effects people.
You'd see, if there were special effects, the lead guy would get a credit, and that's it.
Right.
Now, on like a Star Wars movie or something, there are 10 minutes of hundreds of names. You can't even read them all. People were not credited routinely, really up until 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's
more and more, but really up until 20 years ago, where you see pages and pages and pages of special effects people and CGI and animators, and you would see the head of the department, and that was it.
Yeah, and I mean, like you'd even see like managerial people who do like the HR.
Yeah,
It's all there.
Attorneys.
It's crazy.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
All the people involved with all the music.
And they have to be at the end now because the audience isn't going to stay for it. And if you go, it's a rare obsessed fan that by the time that 16, 18-minute credit roll is over at a Star Wars movie, that there's anyone left in the theater.
I want to.
Plus, if you're looking for it, you can find it online anyway.
I want to start some conspiracy theories where I talk about names that are appearing in all of these movies of somebody who doesn't exist.
Right. They used to say that about
dictionaries and maps.
There.
No, you know about this, right?
Or like paper towns.
Yeah, and so maps didn't want other map manufacturers to copy their maps, and so they put fictional towns in there to know if. And the same thing with dictionaries.
They were called paper towns.
Yeah, they'd invent words that they'd put in there that don't actually exist.
And people used to rent their mailing list. So if you were a magazine subscription and you were renting your mail, you'd have a mailing list of the people that get Good Housekeeping, and you might rent it to Betty Crocker. And they'd have phony names in there, too, so they'd know if Betty Crocker had then sold it to somebody else.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Fucking Betty.
Yeah, Betty was like that.
Yeah.
She was a whore. She had a great reputation, but wow. And a tough businesswoman.
More like Betty Crackhead. Yeah. So beforehand, what were we saying?
I don't know. What was I saying?
I have no idea.
Let's go back.
I think we're talking about dementia.
Credits. Oh, the credit, what?
No, credit system, yeah.
The credit sequence, paper towns. I don't know. Do we have to run this tape back?
No, I don't think so.
We were talking about
the other part is that
towns?
sometimes.
Oh, the phony names in the
phony names in credits.
Oh, they used to say that about. There were a couple of musicians that would write soundtracks, especially for television, that they would be credited on every show, even though someone else was writing it. People used to say that about Irving Zatmary and.
Well, we
some
should
other
do
people
that.
they
So we
know.
should get a couple sort
Yeah.
of, A-level movies.
Yeah.
Go to the end credits, then find a name that happens to be in some of them, and then say, okay, well, that is the person I'm going to claim as fake.
Yeah.
And then just start that as
And
all
just
in.
start that rumor, and
just start it.
QAnon will. And when the guy says, "Hey, it's me," QAnon will say, "No, it's
No,
not.
that's just an actor.
It's an actor.
It's
You
Hollywood.
hired somebody."
Yeah, that person does not exist. Yeah.
And with that, I believe we
What up 48? That was it.
we're run out of time.
I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so we have new lighting. We have
Well,
new
we
tripod.
actually are going to be a full hour, except there's 12 minutes of credits at the end of this. So there we go.
Yeah.
We have new
and,
lighting.
and we also have wireless microphones, and so it's pretty nice.
Well, just
Aren't
like
these
this.
much better?
They're better for me because I can
Much more
I can
convenient.
dance with them on.
It's true. Oh, my sister was on. An old friend of mine. Oh, very nice.